Trade appears to move freely, but movement has already been constrained. Routes have already narrowed. What follows is not free exchange. It is exchange within those limits. Goods travel across continents and oceans. Exchanges connect distant regions. Markets seem to operate without fixed boundaries. But this freedom is an illusion. This is Achronic, a long-form documentary series about power, geography, and time. Not events, not heroes, not chronology. Structures that outlast empires. Trade does not exist independently. It depends on movement, and movement is never evenly distributed across space. It is guided, constrained by terrain, distance, and the structure of routes that have formed over time. What appears as open exchange is built on a system that limits where and how goods can move. Trade follows paths, not possibilities. Trade does not organize itself independently of movement. It inherits the structure through which movement is possible. What can be exchanged is shaped by where goods can travel efficiently. What cannot move at scale remains outside the system. This creates an uneven distribution of exchange. Some regions become highly connected. Others remain peripheral, not because they lack resources, but because they lack integration into viable pathways of movement. Trade, in this sense, is not universal. It is selective, defined by the structure beneath it. Because exchange does not redefine movement, it adapts to it. Once movement is constrained, trade does not escape those limits. It operates within them. Goods do not travel everywhere. They travel where movement is viable. And viability is not defined by freedom. It is defined by efficiency. Routes that sustain trade are not chosen arbitrarily. They emerge from geography. They stabilize through infrastructure. And over time, they become the foundation of economic systems. This creates the appearance of openness. Markets expand. Connections multiply. But beneath this expansion, the structure remains narrow. Trade depends on a limited number of pathways that can sustain large-scale movement. And those pathways are not interchangeable. They are specific. They carry capacity. They connect systems that have adapted to their presence. When trade flows uninterrupted, this structure remains invisible. Exchange appears fluid. Systems appear flexible. But flexibility is constrained, because the routes that support trade cannot be easily replaced. When one becomes unavailable, the system does not simply reroute. It absorbs friction. Costs increase. Delays propagate. Networks that depend on continuity begin to fragment. Trade slows, not because demand disappears, but because movement is constrained. This reveals a fundamental condition. Trade is not defined by exchange alone. It is defined by the structure that makes exchange possible. And that structure is not open. It is selective. Over time, systems adapt to this selectivity. Production aligns with predictable routes. Distribution networks stabilize around established corridors. Economic activity concentrates where movement is reliable. Over time, this alignment produces rigidity. Systems become optimized for continuity. Supply chains depend on precise timing. Distribution depends on predictable flow. Even small disruptions propagate across the system. Because flexibility has been reduced in favor of efficiency, the more optimized a system becomes, the more dependent it becomes on the conditions that allow it to function. And those conditions are rarely stable. They are maintained, and maintenance requires control. What appears as a global system is, in reality, a network shaped by constraint. This constraint does not prevent trade, it defines it. Because trade is not the movement of goods across unlimited space. It is the movement of goods through specific pathways that can sustain scale. And those pathways impose limits. They determine speed. They determine cost. They determine what can move and what cannot. This is why trade cannot be separated from structure. It is not a layer added on top of movement. It is an expression of it. Where movement is stable, trade expands. Where movement is constrained, trade contracts. What appears as economic activity is in reality a reflection of deeper limitations, not visible at all times, but always present. This is why trade has never been truly free. Not because exchange is restricted in principle, but because movement is restricted in structure. Trade does not transcend these limits. It reflects them. What appears as global exchange is shaped long before it begins, not by choice, but by the constraints that define where movement is possible at all.